This is the iPhone 13 mini, and this is the iPhone 17 Pro Max. Moving from one to the other isn't a normal upgrade, it completely changes how you use your phone. I made this switch after years of using the 13 mini, and it wasn't because of the cameras, the screen, or the design. It was for something way more simple. I was tired of being glued to a charger. In this video, I'm not going to give you a boring technical comparison. I'm going to show you exactly what I wish I had known before spending this kind of money, what you gain, what you lose, and whether it's actually worth leaving a small iPhone behind for a beast like this. Alright, so let's take a quick look at what's actually changed between these two phones. On the iPhone 13 mini, you get two cameras, the wide and the ultra wide, both at 12 megapixels. You've also got the flash and the rear microphone back here. Now, on the iPhone 17, this is where things get interesting. You're jumping up to three cameras, the main, the telephoto, and the ultra-wide, and all three are now 48 megapixels. And on top of that, you also get a LiDAR scanner, which unlocks a bunch of AR features and some other cool stuff. Moving to the sides, on the 13 mini, you've got the volume up and down buttons, the classic ring switch for silent mode, and the SIM card tray. Down on the bottom, you've got the microphone, the speakers, and the lightning charging port. On the right side, there's the power button and this little antenna cutout for 5G, which, yeah, kind of looks like the new camera control button, but it's not. Now on the iPhone 17, you do actually get a real camera control button on the right side. On the bottom here, you've got the speakers, the microphone, and now the charging port has switched over to USB-C. And on the left side, you get the action button, which replaces the old ring switch along with the volume buttons. And this particular model still has a SIM card slot. Now let's talk about the display, because this is one of the biggest upgrades. There are really three things to look at here: the bezels, the front camera, and the refresh rate. The 13 mini has pretty thick bezels, and of course, that big notch taking up a lot of space. On the iPhone 17, the bezels are way slimmer, the notch is gone, and you're now getting a 120 Hz refresh rate. So yeah, the difference here is honestly pretty massive. Even the thickness has changed. The iPhone 17 has a thicker chassis, and once you include that camera bump, it jumps all the way up to about 13 millimeters. And when you talk about thickness, you're really talking about one of the biggest differences between these two phones. Size is the biggest difference you're going to notice, and honestly, one of the most important in everyday use, because the change here is massive. If I stack these phones on top of each other, you can literally see that just the camera module on the iPhone 17 is wider than the entire 13 mini. That's kind of wild. And this size jump is a huge win for media consumption. Just look at this. The difference in display size is insane. After using the iPhone 17 Pro Max, going back to the 13 mini feels genuinely uncomfortable. What used to feel normal now looks tiny. But this size increase also brings a few challenges, let's call them that, in daily use. First, if you were used to using your phone with one hand, yeah, that's basically over. The iPhone 17 Pro Max is so big that one-handed use is just awkward. With the 13 mini, it's totally doable, and honestly, that's one of the biggest advantages of having a small phone. Apple does give you a workaround by letting you pull the screen down to reach the top, but it's just not as natural as it is on the 13 mini. Then there's the pocket situation. This phone takes up, well, pretty much your entire pocket. That's not something you deal with on the 13 mini, and if you wear tight pants, you're definitely going to feel it. When you're sitting down and try to pull it out, it's actually kind of a struggle. Here I was sitting on a couch where I could lean back, but if you're in a car seat, for example, where you can't really recline, getting this phone out of your pocket is not easy. In that sense, the iPhone 13 mini is way more comfortable and way more versatile, and that's something you unfortunately give up when you move to a phone this big. Now, it's not all bad with the 17 Pro Max. Even though those are the two areas where I really felt a downgrade, it's time to talk about the elephant in the room: the battery. So, if you're an iPhone 13 mini user, you're probably used to charging your phone constantly throughout the day. That was definitely my experience. You have to carry a charger everywhere and basically live glued to a power outlet. With the iPhone 17 Pro Max, that ends. And honestly, this one thing is exactly why I bought this model in the first place. I was absolutely fed up with the 13 mini's battery. And everything I mentioned earlier, all those downsides, the 17 Pro Max makes up for them with one thing: battery life. I went from charging my phone 3 times a day to just once, and I never even let it drop below 20%, so realistically it could last even longer. I can leave the house without worrying about whether my phone is going to die or if I remembered my charger. That kind of freedom is something the 13 mini just doesn't give you, which honestly makes it feel obsolete today. One thing worth mentioning, my specific model still has a physical SIM slot, which means it actually has slightly less battery than the eSIM only versions. So if you've got the eSIM model, you're going to get even better battery life. Now, to really show you how fast the 13 mini drains, I set up a pretty simple test using video playback and video recording. As you can see here, both phones were charged to 100%. First, I played a YouTube video on both devices and just let it run to see how much battery each one would lose. I cranked the brightness all the way up so both phones were under the same conditions. I left the video playing for about half an hour. After those 30 minutes, I checked the battery levels. The 17 Pro Max was still at 100%, which is honestly crazy, while the 13 mini had already dropped by 11%. That alone gives you a pretty good idea of how weak its battery is, so I ran the video for another 30 minutes to see how things progressed. After that second half hour, I checked again. The 13 mini was now down 20% total, while the 17 Pro Max had only lost about 3%. And that's the sad reality for every iPhone mini user, the battery is just not enough. For the second test, I recorded video at the highest quality possible. Since the 13 mini only supports 4K at 60 frames per second, I used that same setting on the 17 Pro Max, even though it can go all the way up to 120 frames per second. I also turned off HDR on both phones to keep things fair. After 1 full hour of recording, the results were brutal. The 13 mini went from 80% down to 23%. That's a 57% drop in just 1 hour of filming, and the phone was also noticeably hotter. Meanwhile, the 17 Pro Max barely flinched. It only lost 18%. These tests basically confirmed what every iPhone 13 mini owner already knows. This phone desperately needs more battery life. For the camera comparison, I wanted to focus only on the areas where I noticed a real difference between these two devices. That's why every photo and video I took was with the rear cameras. There are some improvements on the front camera too, but honestly, they didn't really blow me away. Probably because I'm not someone who takes a lot of selfies. Let's start with the most obvious one, macro. The iPhone 17 has an incredible macro mode. This is one of those things you don't even realize you're missing until you actually have it. And unfortunately, the 13 mini doesn't have it. So when you try to take a really close-up photo on the 13 mini, you get this. A total mess. But yeah, this comparison is a bit unfair because we're basically putting a phone with macro against one that simply doesn't have it. Next up is zoom. Once again, this is another feature the 13 mini simply doesn't really have. Even though it can go up to 5 times, that zoom is fully digital. On the 17 Pro Max, you get optical zoom up to 8 times and digital zoom all the way up to 40 times. I took photos on both phones at the same zoom levels so we could clearly see the difference. And as you zoom in, the 13 mini's images lose more and more quality. And once you hit 5 times, the photos start to look like a watercolor painting, while the 17 Pro Max keeps an impressive level of detail. In these shots, I pushed the 17 Pro Max all the way to 40 times. Even though the quality drops at that level, it still looks surprisingly good. To get anything close on the 13 mini, you'd have to crop the image heavily, and this is what that looks like. As you can see, there's really no comparison. Now let's look at zoom in video. Just like we've been seeing, the 17 Pro Max delivers some incredible results. This clip was recorded at 8 times zoom and the stabilization is also outstanding. When you compare that to the maximum zoom the 13 mini allows in video, the difference in quality is massive. And honestly, this might be the thing that impressed me the most about the 17 Pro Max. The image quality is on a level you can compare to a lot of professional cameras on the market. And when it comes to stabilization, it actually beats many of them. And that's the full camera comparison. I know it was a bit short, and I left out a few of the new features the iPhone 17 Pro Max brings, but since I don't really use them, I decided not to include them. This wasn't meant to be a super technical breakdown, it was more about my real-world experience moving from the 13 mini's camera to the 17 Pro Max. I'll leave links in the video description to more in-depth camera comparisons, because I know mine was pretty surface level. If you enjoyed the video or found any of this useful, I'd really appreciate a like, a subscription, or even a comment. Any kind of interaction helps a lot. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.